Ben is going to show us the second inventory system this year. And as I mentioned at the first, it's pretty cool that each of these have been customized to suit a particular industry. And with that.
Yes, so I'm Benjamin Wawczak, as many of you know me as Ben. I'm presenting my senior capstone. I created an inventory management system for Van Art Engineering, company in Franklin Park, Illinois. Their vice president actually came to me with this idea because their current inventory system that they use right now, they have two major problems. And those two major problems are that the inventory is still done on paper, and because it's still done on paper, that causes the inventory to be very slow and cluttered. And in an environment where material is coming in and parts are going out constantly, inventory is something that is very important to be kept track of. An example of their current inventory system right now, as you see, it is very cluttered. There is information in columns where it doesn't even belong. There's stuff that is crossed out and rewritten. There's adjustments made because the inventory stock was just not right. Obviously, it's working for what they need right now, but it could be a lot more efficient. And so, working with the company, we decided on a solution. What they wanted would be a database that would hold the inventory, and then a simple user interface for employees to access that inventory, and then the ability to be able to access that on multiple computers so that the inventory wouldn't just have to be, you wouldn't have to go to one room to update it. You could go anywhere in the shop. And then they would like it to be a desktop application. So I'm going to go ahead actually right into the demo to show you the solution that I came up with. So this is Van Art Inventory Management. And login screen here, I'm going to go ahead and log in just as myself. So when you log in, you get this nice window that I just call the home page. And at the top here, you have 6 main buttons that every user will see no matter what account they are. And then below that, I am logged in as administrator, so you get administrative controls to actually edit the database, the 4 buttons that are below there. So I'll go into right away one of the buttons that will probably be used most often, which is the View and Edit Inventory. Once you click on that, it pulls up a nice window. On the left side, you have an inventory quick view, and it shows you very quickly everything that is, all the parts that are in the inventory right now. So right now there's not a lot of parts, but maybe in day-to-day usage there might be 50 or so parts in there. If you're looking for a specific part, you might not want to scroll through all of that, so there is a way to search based on company. It will pull up all of the parts that are listed under a specific company. And of course, if you want to bring back all of them, you can easily refresh there. So then when you found the part that you would like to edit, simply click on it, and it pulls it up in the expanded view. It also pulls up some more information about that part, such as material description, the Rockwell, which is the hardness of the material, and pounds per 1,000, which is a number used to calculate, well, I'll explain in a minute. So there's some other information, of course, that's mirrored in the quick view. Once the part is inside the expanded view, you are able to start updating the stock. So there's 2 ways on the bottom of the screen to update the stock. One of the main ways that the company uses is that, say they get an order of 10,000 pounds of material. They want to know how many parts 10,000 pounds of material is going to yield. So very simply, you can put in 10,000, update the stock, and you see the stock went up from 30,000 to 61,000. So it went up about 31,000 parts. So 10,000 pounds of material will yield approximately 31,000 parts. It's an estimated value, and that's what they wanted. Now, on a day-to-day usage, there might be parts that there might be parts that aren't made correctly that have to get thrown out, or maybe they don't yield that exact amount of parts that certain day. So there's also a way to say, maybe they didn't make 31,000 parts, they're 500 less of that. So you can easily say 500, subtract that, and it also updates. You can update per specific part amount as well. And then, so as you saw in the paper inventory, there was a way to view the history of all the past updates. You can click View History button, and it shows you the current stock easily in the right-hand corner, and then you know that this history report was created today at 5:40 p.m. And then you have since the beginning that this part was created in the database. It started at 0, and you have the date and time that any change was made, what the change was, the current stock after that change, and then the employee that made that change. Right now they're mostly me. There was one other user that snuck in there. So back to the home screen, say an office employee wanted to, they probably don't want to go through all of that information just to maybe view the history if they're working in the office or need to see the current stock. So there's another easy button on here that you can simply check the inventory history, pull up that same part, and go right to the history page that I just showed you before. Same exact information is shown there. Then what's going to be very helpful for a lot of the employees is the export inventory as PDF. Because right now they are very used to their inventory on paper, and it might be challenging for them to right away go from paper to having everything on this software here. So if they'd like to export one of the parts as onto a PDF, you can do that the same way by selecting a company, that part that you want to export. Typically it'll ask you where you want to save. I'm just going to go ahead and save on the desktop, replace what was already there, and go ahead and open that inventory. So I designed it so that it would mirror the inventory that they currently use as on paper, so you have part information on the top. And then I also decided to add right at the top below that here, we see the current stock. So that's very important because you want to know how much stock you have. And then the date that this report was created so that you know how old it was. Also, of course, you have that same history information that was showed in the other window, and it's all in the right column and row as it should be. So then there's a report a problem button, and that's mostly just used for, say, an employee made a mistake, or there's something that they might have thought gone wrong. So they can report a problem, and that will go directly to an administrator, which can view all the problems in their administrative panel. And then there's change password and logout, which I won't go too much into because I feel like you should assume you know what those do. So then, as a few of the administrative controls, of course, it's going to be important for the company to maybe add more companies or more parts if they're getting new orders. So let's go ahead and quickly, you can also view other company information too. So the company has a phone number and an address if you need to call them, get a hold of them. So actually there's enough companies in there that don't have any parts, so I'm just going to go ahead and add a new part. You can also view the part information in this tab. So we'll go ahead and add a new part. We'll give it part number 5678, and we'll assign that to the Bayside company. Thickness of that part can be 0.105, maybe the width is 6, and advanced can be 1.2. So these are all numbers that they use based on what material they're getting. The weight of the material then, it's set to be steel, so the weight of steel is 0.28361. That's what the material that they use most often, so it's preset in there for ease. And then you can go ahead, so with those four numbers, you can calculate the parts per 1,000 pounds. So that number is the for every, this is where I get confused because I'm not in the tool and die industry. They just gave me an equation that I have to use. But it's for every 1,000 pounds, or for a certain amount of weight will yield a certain one. It's very confusing. But I'm going to skip over that because it's not important to the actual presentation. So anyways, the pounds per 1,000 number is 214, and we'll give it a random hardness of, say, 50. We're going to go ahead and add that part to the inventory, and if we go and check the inventory, we see that that part is now in the inventory with 0 stock. So if we double click on that, all the same information that I just entered is now in the expanded view, and if we wanted to say update again by maybe 12,000 pounds of material was ordered, you see that 12,000 pounds of material produces 56,000 parts. So what it's doing is it's taking the amount of material that was ordered divided by the number of parts per 1,000, and then it's in 1,000 parts. So you divide the weight of material by the parts per 1,000, and then you multiply by 1,000. So it makes 1,000 parts for every 1,000 parts. It's kind of confusing. But then again, you can go ahead and log out, and it brings you back to the login screen. So as I just showed you, the user flow of control, you start at the login screen, and once you log in, you go to the home screen. From the home screen, you have the biggest 3 options that most users will be using is editing the inventory, viewing the history, and exporting to a PDF. If you're an administrator, you can also edit information in the database. Both editing information in the database and editing the inventory will be saved to Firebase, which is the database that I used. And then exporting as a PDF will be saved to a PDF document on the disk. So it can also be used as a way to back up information if the database is not being able to be accessed, because you do need an internet connection to do so. So as I just mentioned, I use Firebase database. This allows the ability to be accessed on any computer because it is stored in the cloud. It also allows to be updated in real time. If 2 different employees are working on the same part, it's important that it is updated real time because you need to know the amount of stock that's currently in the inventory. So as many of you may know, Firebase is set up as a non-relational database, but I tried to set it up with the API that I'm using, made it very easy, as a relational database. So you kind of see I made sort of tables. I have like company history material parts table. I've expanded the parts one, and say so for part 1 it has a relationship to company 1, a relationship to history 1, relationship to material 1, and then it has its own information as part number and that pounds per 1,000 number. So it made it a lot easier for me to understand because I'm used to working with relational databases. And then for the UI, I used C# WPF, which is Windows Presentation Foundation. This was simple to understand, I believe, as you see, it was with the 6 buttons. And then it's important that this is simple to understand because the employees are not accustomed to using software. Again, they're used to using the piece of paper, and they're not accustomed to using computers in general at all. So what's easy for you and me to say, maybe when you want to save your Word document, is you go to File, Save As. You know how to do that. It's very intuitive. It might not be intuitive to someone who's really never worked with a computer before. So what's nice about the 6 buttons is that they do exactly what they say they're going to do. If you know that you want to check the inventory history, you can click the button that says Check Inventory History. And then it's also important that this can be run on any Windows computer. So with the .NET framework, the .NET framework will take care of that. If it's a Windows 7, Windows 8, it should run on any of those as long as the correct framework is installed. And that's important because some of their operating systems still are in Windows 7 because the older operating systems work better with the machines that they currently have. And it is nice to know that this design has been accepted by the company. I have shown it to the vice president, and he enjoys the design and thinks that he would be able to understand it, and it would be an easy transfer from paper to this. Of course, it will still take some time, but so it leads me to the lessons for next time. I think it's going to be very important for maybe those who are doing this next year to stick to the spec in the fall. We outlined a very specific, detailed spec that we wanted for each program, and there was a lot of times where I was writing code where I'd say, oh, I should add this, and then not only does that waste a lot of time because I deviated from what I originally said, it was also then making assumptions because I'm building something specific for a company, and then I was making assumptions based on maybe this is something they would like, and it turned out that in some cases that was true, but in some cases I was asked why did I add that, and it would have benefited me to not waste time on something that I would have had to take out in the end. It's also important, I think a lot of people have said this, to read up on documentation, because it happened to me as well, where I was using an API that I thought was working perfectly fine, and then I got to one last thing that I needed to do, and of course it didn't do that. So I had to change the API I was using, which basically changed the entire way that I was accessing Firebase as the database, which again took a lot of time out of time I could have spent on doing something else. And it's just like opening a new box or a new computer and throwing out the manual. I know everyone does that, but in a case of me actually writing a project, it's not good to do that. So then some personal reflection. I found this little graphic, and I thought it was really interesting because I think this goes for all of our projects. What you're seeing right now is the success and what we're finished. But what you don't see, and what's important to also just building this project, is the dedication, the hard work, even disappointment and failures that went into this project and the learning experiences that come out of that. So that's pretty big, and I'll take away a lot from that. And then I think it's really important to me that I'm giving back to my father. So you heard me talk a lot about this vice president for this company. Well, he happens to be my father. So I think it's really special that 4 years ago my parents decided to help me invest in getting an education, and now 4 years later I'm able to create something for him and give back to him in something that he'll actually plan on using, which I think is really cool. So unfortunately they weren't able to be here today, so hopefully they'll be able to watch the recording, and if he can figure out how to open the video when I send him the link. So that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
So you've already answered my first question. Are you still going to continue to deal with this bad art company? Probably you will.
Yes.
So are there any plans now? Sounds like this is a toehold into the company as far as I'm changing over to this type of thing. Do they already have other processes or computerized systems that would give them more business decision related stuff, or could this be then the building point for making this decision? We're getting a bunch of information from this company and things that they're not recognizing now that might be able to help them.
Yeah, that's actually something that I would have liked to add, just didn't have the time, and also maybe something I would like to continue to work on, if they are going to continue to use this, is have a way so that they could see maybe what parts are getting them the most money, or what companies they're, stuff like that. Exactly, yeah, I think that would be very beneficial for them, and something that my dad is interested in as well.
It doesn't seem like with their paper way, it's almost impossible.
Yeah. You could pull out some nice graphs and everything based on the information that what parts are coming in and out. Yeah.
So 2 questions, Chris. So first of all, was there I didn't see it, but was there a way for employees to find missing passwords beyond talking to a boss?
No, you would have to probably talk to an administrator. It's a very small company, so it wouldn't have a problem doing that. And also, so when an administrator, an administrator like would have to create a new account for a new employee, and then they get a defaulted password. So then once you log in the first time, you are forced to change your password. So it would be a password that you create, of course. But yeah, there could be a time where you forget your password, and then an administrator could go back and reset it for you. But you would have to talk to.
And then the second one was there any other descriptor besides the materials? Because I didn't see like hammer, screw, or was that a design choice? Was that a...
Well, it's based on, so it's not inventory like you might think, like hammer, screw, something like that. It's very specific, like parts, and they each have a part number and what type of material they use. Because they're actually taking material, like raw material, steel, and creating parts that will then be shipped out to other companies that use those parts to make something bigger. So does that kind of answer your question? Okay. So the parts have a specific number, then that's how they're identified.
You hinted at this story a little bit, but wasn't it just kind of like you were making this project on your own, and at the very end you showed it to him, or was the vice president heavily involved in what he wanted throughout the whole year?
There was a lot more of with the U. Are you asking like with the UI user interface specifically, or
yeah, or
okay.
just like how it works? Yeah.
Because how it works, like the equations that are running in the background, that's all coming from him. Information that I had no idea about that industry. But the user interface itself, it was more or less they don't really have any knowledge of what it could be, and he really wanted it to just be very simple to understand, so that it could be an easy transition from paper to something that he's never used before. And I showed him in process along the way where I was going, and it was more of just like, yes, I agree, you can keep going in that direction. It wasn't not really like, I want this, implement this, just because he was unfamiliar with what I could implement.
And following up on that, I think it would be interesting, maybe, first of all, he's your dad, so he's probably not going to criticize your UI too much.
Well, yeah.
But I wonder if you showed it to someone maybe a little lower level who's actually going to use it.
Yeah, and I think that there's still, probably over the summer, if they do decide, hopefully, to implement this in the business, there's going to be a little bit more implementation that I have to do on my end to actually start running it on their computers and making sure that their employees understand how to use it, and that'll take some time from me as well. So.
You never know. Maybe your dad doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Uh-huh.
So I know what they originally said was that they wanted a desk application, so it's completely all right. But is there a way to make it look presentable if you pull up your browser on your phone and then went to this website, or is there no like?
Well, it's not actually a website. It is fully a desktop application. So,
okay.
it's not like maybe you're thinking of like Electron, which is
right.
run. Yeah, but this is actually running on the desktop as an application. So I couldn't necessarily access it on my phone, but I would think that would be an interesting way to view the inventory on the phone. But another thing is that we wouldn't want the employees walking around the shop looking at their phone. It'd be better or safer for them just to go to a stand where a desktop is and update that inventory. Yeah.
So I think you kind of already answered my question, but just to ask it again, so you don't know if they are going to implement it? Because it kind of sounds like they want to, or like they're intending to, but you're not 100% sure.
They are intending to, so probably like 95% sure, but it's a matter of now that it's a 99% finished, I will now have to actually go there and make sure that everyone understands how it works. And if there are those cases where maybe there could be a change that could be better, I could do that.
Were there any issues with using Firebase, kind of like a relational database? In other words, like updating or deleting things? Is that
Yeah, I think
harder?
that was probably one of the hardest things that I had to do was communicate with. Not only does C# not have like JavaScript is very easy to communicate with Firebase. C# is not. So setting it up, I think that to answer your actual question, setting it up like a relational database didn't really have an effect, and I don't think it made it any harder. But to expand on your question, I think it was just hard to communicate with Firebase in general, just because that's something I'm not familiar with. But it was definitely a learning curve. But once I figured out where the data was going and how I could retrieve it, it got a lot easier. And it got a lot easier for me to understand when it was set up as a relational database, because that's what I've had most experience with.
So I'm guessing there's not like an object relational mapper in C# that talks to a Firebase?
No, not exactly. I'm using actually just an open source API that someone else is able to.
Did you ever think about writing one?
Not currently.
I'm gonna write that down for somebody next year.
Yeah.
So I know in our class we don't really cover C# and VPF, so how hard was that to pick up for you, and how did you like it?
I don't think it was too hard. I liked it a lot, and actually I think it might have helped me get a position after school, because I'll actually be working with a company that's doing C# WPF. But it was more just because I wanted to, like you said, we do a lot of C, C++, we've done Java, and C# and Firebase were two things that I haven't used before, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to add something else that I haven't used before, something new that I could learn. It definitely took, there's a learning curve every time you're learning a new language, but once you get the hang of it and you understand functionality, it was easy after that.
Thank you.
All right.